Report from the observer Yax Lippo to his home planet. To my respected brothers and sisters, we are nearing the end of our period of observation of the planet Sheba, which its inhabitants name Earth. Here is the resume of my detailed report, which I entrusted to the space probe 4332. The inhabitants of this planet call themselves people. A majority of these people are hypocrites and false beings who consider themselves endlessly important. They fight one another for trivial reasons and are not above torturing their own kind in dreadful ways. A few Sheba years ago, in the country which they call Africa, there lived a soldier of low rank who elevated himself to the position of dictator by means of cunning and force. He imposed a rule of terror without dignity or justice, ordered wholesale murder and torture, and enriched himself at the expense of his victims as well as of other countries. The people of this planet now have at their disposal a worldwide information network, so all the inhabitants of Sheba knew what was going on, yet this did not prevent them doing trade with this butcher and maintaining diplomatic relations. Politicians is the name given to those who serve the government of a country. They travel all over the place, making promises which they are often unable to keep. Their brains work in a one-sided way, although they represent themselves to the outside world as open and broad-minded. These politicians each belong, in fact, to a party, whose aim is nothing other than to impose its own ideology. An ideology is very similar to a kind of primitive religion. These politicians are always dreaming up new policies with which to undermine the efforts of their people. With serious and responsible faces, they tell their people that the state needs money, which is the value given to work and effort. They keep coming up with new regulations, legislation, and prohibitions, and since these always require new administrating bodies, the state requires more and more of this money. No politician dares to repeal old and long outdated regulations because it would then be necessary to close down various administrative bodies and offices. Parties do not like doing this. It does not fit well with their ideology. As a result of all this, money-gobbling monster institutions arise which end up devouring the achievements and efforts of each individual. The individual becomes tired and ill, and loses the desire or the will to sacrifice himself for the sake of these money-eating monsters. This leads to the country falling into chaos, either because it comes to be dominated by larger and larger institutions, or because it is conquered by a stronger country. The third possibility is what is called here a revolution of the people against the government. Many countries have suffered revolutions. They only postpone the original evil, however, for the revolutionary government soon introduces new money-devouring giants. And then the whole business starts again. Revolutions are also primitive ideologies, for they impose something upon those who think differently. People have invented weapons systems with which they can destroy the planet. In spite of their destructive power, these weapons are no threat to our defensive shields. The Sheba inhabitants justify their dreadful weapons either on the grounds that a particular ideology must become widespread, or that they must defend themselves from a different ideology. The leaders of these ideologies are always fanatics. Their heads are filled with nothing but straw. Straw means dried stems, which are easy to burn. For more than a century now, people have been producing all kinds of useful and senseless things. They have invented and discovered many things which make life easier for them. They call all these things goods, and since these goods are only produced through the efforts of individuals or whole groups of people, they have to be sold. The sale brings the very money I spoke of before, which is the value given to work. Money is therefore a highly desirable thing, for with it one can buy many other products. Many people, including the government and religious groups, get hold of money without doing anything to earn it. They take it away from those who did the work. This occurs through lies, deception, robbery, murder, and, to a large extent, through ideology. It is the aim of every ideology to get hold of the money of others in order to distribute it to its own members. The politicians, of course, pretend to the people that what they are doing is just. You can now see that such behavior is very close to derangement and madness. In the process of producing their goods, they pollute their planet in a way that gives grave cause for concern. They not only destroy the chemical structures of their own life processes with heavy metals and poisons of all kinds, but are also stupid or obstinate enough to allow the products that they sell to produce other poisons in their turn. It would be easy to avoid this or filter these poisons, but many people are reluctant to do so because the purification processes would require work, which therefore involves money as well. Equally senseless is human non-logic in relation to their own species. The educated ones among them know very well what the causes are of all their environmental problems. The more people inhabiting the planet, the more goods have to be produced. They all need living quarters, furniture, clothes, crockery, and so on. Also, more people continually require more food and produce ever more waste. All this means more work has to be expended and more energy, so they are using up all their resources. It is true that the Sheba inhabitants have done well in mastering nuclear energy, but this energy is not allowed to be used in many places for ideological reasons. They do not know what to do with their radioactive waste, and believe that they would be leaving their children's children a dangerous inheritance. It does not occur to them that later generations, much cleverer than they, will be able to make productive use of this waste. The human cycle of stupidity could be regulated by means of birth control. The more intelligent among the politicians and the religious leaders know this, yet they do not combine their forces to bring the population explosion to a halt, and the individual leaders of the large groups and parties never speak publicly of the catastrophe which threatens. This is solely because of self-interest. Every ideology wants as many dumb sheep under its power as possible. Birth control is therefore always something for others, never for one's own people. Equally incomprehensible is the behavior of people in regard to their religion. You should know that on earth there are larger religions which are usually older, and smaller religious communities which split off from the larger ones. Every religion, without exception, pronounces itself to be the only right one. Thus each condemns the adherents of other religions as unbelievers. To do so, they cite texts which they or their forebears have themselves falsified or failed to properly understand. They have even concocted religions out of the previous numerous visits of our forefathers to Sheba. These religions have always been, and still are, the cause of dreadful wars. Their non-logic and boundless self-aggrandizement allows them to think that anyone not belonging to their religion is not a child of God, and can therefore be slaughtered without any moral qualm. Of course, the soldiers and the armies which deal out this slaughter will only carry out these atrocities so long as they believe in a particular religion. To ensure this, the members of whole countries are kept in a state of ignorance. It is forbidden to educate and enlighten them. I am transmitting to you a few picture sequences which I took at religious festivals. You will see people worshipping a holy stone with deep devotion. Others are kneeling in front of great, large-bellied sculptures. Others again are piercing parts of their own bodies with needles or carry female effigies through the streets, accompanied by song and prayer. A large proportion of the Sheba inhabitants worship a human corpse which hangs from a wooden cross. They say he is the son of their highest god. You can see for yourselves that they dress themselves in strange colors and outfits for their religious ceremonies, and perform all sorts of peculiar and absurd actions. They do all this with an incomprehensible seriousness, and always with belief in the words of their particular Savior. The condition of the planet and its inhabitants is devastating. There would still be time to undo the environmental damage by means of the excellent technology they are developing, but they only do this, at best, in the wealthier countries. There is no overall unity on the planet Sheba. Each government does what it wants and avoids interference from other nations. It is true that they have managed to form a global institution which they call the United Nations, but this has no law-enforcing power. Neither does it have the power to put an immediate end to any injustice or conflict. The politicians of this United Nations are sent by their government to a large assembly hall. Since every country abides by its own ideology, the discussions in the assembly do not go beyond ideological questions. I can well imagine your astonishment, my dear brothers and sisters, at the behavior of these Sheba people. I recommend that we should try to help the planet and its people, but without drawing their attention to us. Any direct intervention would be an enormous shock to them. The large majority of Sheba inhabitants, particularly their religious leaders, believe that they are the only intelligent life form in the universe. I embrace you, honored brothers and sisters. I now leave observation of the planet Sheba to my good colleague, Uptilo.